Tools, stop recording.
User in your channel stopped recording.
There we go. All right.
And relax.
We can do all of the swearing now. It's great.
Yes, that's all.
There were a couple of F-bombs in there somewhere, I'm sure.
Did I swear that much?
Oh yes, no, there were a few.
That's
Yes.
fine.
It's fine.
It's
fine. I can tick. I can either go through an editor or I can tick the box that says naughty words.
I mean, it's fine.
Or you can just mute
fine.
Pazer's track entirely. That's
fine,
fine
yeah.
too.
It's fine. I didn't say anything of value at all throughout the entire thing. So yeah, it's fine.
No, thank you, guys. That was really interesting. Chat, like live chat, you've been mostly ignored. Hello, Mr. Gibbons, if you're still here, thank you very much for the raid as well, and a couple of other raids that we had, Realsome and who else was it? Greg, thank you very much for the raid.
Meanwhile,
Muchly
I have
appreciated.
5,000 pings on Discord because apparently something happened just as we went live. But yeah.
Oh really?
Yeah, something. I don't know.
Yeah, that's
something. Oh, there's something. Yeah, I don't know. That's something I'm not mentioned. I can't mention the something. Yes. No. Seriously. My French is terrible. And my Dutch is non-existent. So props to you guys. I'm always amazed when people can do this kind of thing in a second language. So yeah, thank you very much for doing that.
English feels more like my first language at this point than Dutch. I speak so much English on a daily basis, like on the internet and stuff, that my Dutch is actually kind of like almost getting worse because of it.
I've heard a few people say things like that when they're operating in an English environment, they start to forget. I even sort of, not really quite the same thing, but I kind of experienced it when I went to study in the US for a year. I started to forget the British English words for things. And I actually had to, this was like late 90s, I had to phone my mother and say, Mum, what's it called? Like the thing on the back of a car that has the numbers on it. What's it called? Because license plate had gone into my head and I could not get it out. And it's like, what's the Brit? I went to talk to my roommate and I was like, oh yeah, the and my brain just couldn't produce the word. We call them number plates, but my brain couldn't remember that. And I had to say, Mum,
plates. They've always been license
do
plates.
you?
Yeah.
Do you? It must be a regional thing. It's a number plate. Number plate.
License
Number plate.
plate.
Number plate.
And a number.
You got a license for that, mate.
You got a license?
No, it's in, at least in the south and apparently the Midlands, it's a number plate.
We're British. We have a license for everything. Have you got a license to kill, mate? Stats, do you have a license to kill?
No.
You work for the MOD. You must have a license to kill, right?
No. I have a license to print.
Let's work into the conclusion.
A license to staple.
Just his cover.
A license to spreadsheet.
Oh wow! Speaking of spreadsheet,
right. A license to book hotels.
Trivago, not sponsored.
It's a number plate, despite half the characters being letters. Quiet, Kellogg's.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, no, I've sort of experienced that kind of myself, and yeah, no, I understand that. So yeah. So cool. I mean, if you guys chat, if you guys have any questions for these guys that they can answer casually, then please do ask them. I mean, they are watching chat.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take a little break.
I personally have some time to dedicate to chat questions if there are.
Oh, cool. Yeah. No, if you wanna
since we couldn't
do that,
couldn't really interact, I stream sometimes myself, and I like to take part to.
I know what you mean.
It's
a really hard thing to force yourself to ignore chat. During tournaments, I get the same thing where I can see chat like out of the corner of my eye, and like occasionally someone will say something and you just have to somehow respond to them.
Yeah, and anyways, thank you guys for having us on the podcast. And since we're talking to a sizable audience, I would like to extend a thank you to the viewers and guys in general who've been following us all these years and cheering for us. It's been very intense and enjoyable,
So here's a question from: what makes the French DDs the preferred DDs in cards? Their speed, mostly, I'd imagine. That's why we would use them.
Yes, Killer Bin is right.
They can just get places quicker.
They teleport. It's consumable.
It is the main differentiating factor that the French DDs have for themselves compared to the competition. It's the speed. It's more the speed than the firepower or the reload booster or anything of that kind. It's the speed, 100%.
Yeah, so a Daring's a better capped contester, but a Daring is going to be there minutes after a Marceau or a Kleber.
Were you running the Kleber lineup you ran was 1 legendary module, 3 regular, right?
Yes. When we used Quad Club, it was 1 leg mod and 3 normal.
Why the 1 legendary mod? Because I remember that makes it more of a torpedo boat.
It spots.
Makes it a spotter bitch.
Ah, right.
This is what we use it for, since now you have a 6 km-ish concealment rocket traveling around the map at like 50 plus knots constantly.
Do you run Surf and Silence on that?
Yeah, I think so.
But that's the thing, like, if you're playing a conventional sort of heavier with more cruisers than a destroyer team, and you're fighting a heavy French DD team, you're like, they've gone dark. Where are they going? Which one of our destroyers is going to get ran over?
Yeah, and the thing is, even if you know where they are headed, they change places faster than you can adapt yourself, which means you may anticipate where their first location will be, and you put a sizable force there to meet them and counter them. That's fair enough. But they will have rotated to the other side before you've had enough time to reallocate your resources to that side of the map, which means they will, if they're played by a skilled team, they will be constantly moving around and contesting the areas that you left open. This is exactly what the Asians did with their triple Marceau wolf pack. They were constantly moving around the map, exploiting the weaknesses. You see the Marceau somewhere, so you disengage from that area, and you want to take advantage of the Marceaus being on A to gain space on C by going aggressively. But before you have time to realize it, the Marceau wolf pack has moved from A to C and will take advantage of the fact that you advanced on C thinking the Marceaus weren't going to be there, right? And since they're so fast, and that's the same for Klebers, you're really just on the long term gonna get out controlled and outmaneuvered. And this is even bigger of an issue in clan battles, which is mostly because of the caps layout. The major difference between COTS and clan battles, it's not the amount of ships or the meta or anything, it's the caps layout. In King of the Sea, it's standard domination with 3 symmetrical caps in the middle of the map. In Clan Wars, it's a base cap setup with 1 neutral base, which makes French cheese wolf packs even more powerful. French cheese wolf pack were actually born in clan battles.
Yes.
But this is such a deep topic that we would need 4 hours of streaming to get
it. And the other thing is that the torpedo arrangement on Kleber and Marceau are more geared to aggression. Like we've all seen the standard Marceau Kleber charges at a battleship, jinx right, dumps 6 torps, jinx left, drops 6 more torps.
I think the other thing
it's harder to hit them as they do that.
The other thing that we definitely saw was because Kleber was banned in some matches, teams were substituting Marceaus. The less experienced teams maybe were not forgetting, but I don't know, like in the heat of the battle or whatever, sending Marceaus to do what they would have otherwise sent a Kleber to do, and those torpedoes don't quite do the same thing. And leaving a battleship sitting there going, ow, that hurt, but I'm still alive. So you're dead now. And your rush has failed. I saw that a couple of times.
Oh god, we're not going to talk about those. There's like 1 Marceau rush on Land of Fire at ACAP, which just completely whiffed.
Oh, I remember. Yes, no, I do remember that one. Another question from Nuclear Funk. For competitive play, how much does individual skill factor in at the very top level?
What's your take on this, Killer Ben? Because I know I have a radical opinion on this.
My opinion often is that a team of competent players who communicate well will usually beat a team of excellent players that don't. But it's rare that excellent players don't communicate.
Well, yeah, that's correct. Although I think when it comes to top play, skill versus synergy is a like 60-40 or 70-40 in favor of skill. Because there are things that synergy cannot compensate. There are positioning mistakes or
Oh, absolutely.
map reading skills.
Solo destroyer timings, torpedo timings, stuff like that I've seen from some of the high element destroyer players.
Yeah, this synergy cannot replace. And what's important to understand also is that synergy as a whole and team overall team play, what is called team play, is just the sum of correct individual decision making. There's no team play with or team synergy without individual quality.
Oh, absolutely. I think I would definitely agree with your like 60-40, 70-30 split in favor of skill.
Yeah, like it could be very well argued that Baz single-handedly won that map against Ban CV with his shimmer torps onto Blood Legend and Strangers.
Yeah, this was excellent play. And more generally, you may have great like communication skills or great synergy. You may be playing with a team that's been playing with each other for forever. If you face better players that will not do the mistakes that your guys do, or constantly win their 1v1s, you'll simply lose on the long run, like inevitably. Which makes the individual skill part super important, more than the team synergy, really.
Yeah. Here's one that I think I'll be interested to see where we all fall. Can you ask the guys which one or two older ships would you like to see buffed for competitive and how?
Yu Yang, Zhao.
Zhao, definitely.
I think if
Maybe
you give Zhao
Kinlan.
10k more health, he suddenly becomes a viable pick again.
Yeah, I guess because nowadays you just get stomped by the likes of Goliath or
Yeah.
but yes, Zhao could be an idea. Yue Yang, yeah, I don't know, maybe. But Zhao is really the one off meta ship.
I think if you polled the King of the Sea Discord and you said if you could pick one ship to have a buff for competitive, what would it be? I think the answer would be Zhao.
Yes, but
I think everyone would love to see it.
Or Kerr first. Unironically, I would like to see a roll for Kerr first.
It's different. The thing that is though that you've got
to.
to.
He's a punching bag.
she's for source of entertainment for sure.
Look, Land of Fire, Kerr first through the middle of B Strat to side. I don't think we're going to be seeing much in the way of Kerr first and Cots. Okay.
The problem is though, I think while you could buff Zhao and it wouldn't become ridiculously overpowered in random battles, I think if you did that to GK, I think it probably would.
Yeah, but the wearables would bring the average down, so it's going to balance out.
Nah.
Also, a question from Mix_A about that GK play you mentioned earlier. Do you think any other battleship would make any difference in that same position?
Yes, Kremlin.
Yeah, the obvious, the new pushing battleship in competitive is the Kremlin.
Ohio, if you really want to go for it.
Yeah,
but
if you want, but Ohio's more of the quirky pusher.
Mm-hmm.
For most teams, it's like we need to push this flank. All right, just put a Kremlin on it and go.
I can't wait for the Swift and Silence Kremlin 10-line ramming meta to come along.
The fact that you made Henning genuinely think about that, and he was
He's still going to be having PTSD about it.
No, it was like that could work. No, and he was like, no, why are you stop putting these ideas in my head?
Well, maybe King of the Sea 13 will have Satsuma.
Well, I should hope not.
I'm joking.
Firstly, why didn't I get Satsuma to test in random battles? Because, you know, I'm a CC, I should get these things.
I know, right?
I know. Like, yeah.
So there should be some perks.
Yeah.
Another question. What makes good shot calling and what makes a good commander and is playing and commanding at the same time hard?
Well, I think one thing that you probably don't realize is that most of the callers on these teams will be playing the battleship. Not always, but generally speaking, they'll be playing one of the battleships so that they can.
As far as I know, that's not. I don't. Who's actually calling in top clans? That's actually a BB player.
Oh, really?
If
Like-
Like
Interesting.
in rain, I used to do it, and I never played BP.
Interesting. Okay, well, that's just blown that thought out of the water.
TWA is only Tung or Blood Legend. They don't
Yeah.
play BP.
I know
Yeah.
about Anlay, and I know
Yeah, they played-
Strangers
Omni
when he
was
calls.
Strangers, who's
Yeah.
just
Strangers
playing
played in a
DD.
DD, but Strangers just sort of shouted.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just different kind of shot calling.
Yeah, something about underage boats and yeah.
Because like, does everyone in COTS use the legendary captains if they are available to the players? Yes.
Yes.
Not necessarily the legendary
Don't-
ones.
Don't
the
forget
improved
that
ones,
talents.
skills.
Don't forget that talents don't work in the training room.
Yeah.
Oh
So
god, because Hex off Kremlins in COTS.
yeah,
Ooh.
so you don't get the talent activations, but obviously you do get the improved skills.
One thing I
So
was looking
they
at
will do.
was the amount of people who were not taking Philippe Abignon on the French DDs,
Philippe
especially
what?
when they're on press counts.
What the
I'm
fuck?
I'm sorry for butchering that name, Lulu.
Aubignon.
Fine. Obuano.
But that's it.
Aubergine.
Philippe Aubignon.
Obuano. Yeah.
Philippe Aubergine.
Question from Vanyup. How did the commander rework and the new skills influence this COTS from a player's perspective?
So maybe I can answer this one, and then I'll go back to the FC one, which was interesting.
Sure. Yeah, please do.
So the commander rework, I talked about it earlier. The removal of fire prevention on the cruisers was a big thing, made it harder to use passive, not passive, but like control strategies with Stalingrad and Moskva's blocking lots of areas, made it less efficient. Deadeye had a big impact on battleship picks. Conk became a viable pick thanks to Deadeye. And it obviously made BBs a bit better. I mean, significantly better, but it did not completely change the meta. Apart from that, it did not have a really a big impact at all, really.
You could less rely on a Stalin holding a flank just by taking a while to die.
Oh well, we saw just how fast four fires burns down a Stalingrad. I think it was about 17 seconds, something like that. We watched one get burned down on. That was yeah.
Also about this Commander FC question, is it hard to play and command at the same time? It is, although you get used to it. And most of the times in seasoned, experienced teams, the FC slash caller slash commander is not in charge of microing everyone and their grandmother. It's very important. Players need to be able to make their own decisions by themselves, because if they have to wait for the caller to make the decision by themselves, to make the decision for them, sorry, they're most likely already half a minute or an entire minute late on the decision, because the caller will see the good play, but most likely after the best timing. So players need to have their need to be able to make their own decisions, and this is the main selection factor for competitive teams aiming to win stuff. This is basically the one talent that is the hardest to find in the warships player. Sorry, because you can have a player with very good technical skills, very good 1v1 abilities, but if they can't make the right decisions by themselves, then it's pointless for competitive.
Oh, absolutely. You have to trust your players.
Yeah, so the FC, the commander does not have to micro everyone. The commander is responsible for the main, let's say, general strategic orientations of the team and the dynamics of the game. So he will be calling major rotations. He will be calling contests, probably. Could be calling radars, at least on one part of the map, which of course has an impact on the commander's individual play. It's often more convenient to have the commander play a more static ship, or at least a ship with a straightforward role, such as a radar cruiser sitting behind an island. It's very hard, for example, to have your FC play a destroyer, because destroyers in competitive, um, they they take a lot of focus to be played properly.
Yeah.
You cannot afford to shift your attention away from your own game and positioning. But it doesn't mean it's impossible.
Otherwise, you end up with the strangers shot shouting. Because they're doing so many things at once that just degenerates into yelling. But no, like, as a caller myself, yeah, it's certainly a case of the way I tend to joke about it is everyone agrees to the plan going into the match. Like everyone knows where they're going, and then past that point, as you say, the caller calls when ships have to move positions. If something's happening, you call the main target. But if it's a case of it's like if my common phrase is if you can shoot X, if you can't shoot X, do whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
Also,
And
I think
sometimes, and sometimes as the caller, you tell someone says like, "What do I do?" and you go, "You just
Yeah.
stay there and die."
exactly. It's I think it's very analogous, through no coincidence, to being like a manager in a workplace. So you're not the one who's doing the machine tooling or writing the document or whatever it is that your workers are doing. You're using information that they bring you and information that you can see directly, and you are directing them to achieve an outcome. You're not necessarily saying, right, use your front turret to shoot that ship and use your rear turret to shoot that ship and turn slightly to the... You're not doing that kind of thing. What you're doing is saying, this is the outcome that I want you to achieve. Go into the cap, contest it, spot that ship, whatever it happens to be. But exactly how that player is going to do that is entirely up to them. And if they don't think it's possible, for whatever reason, because of course they're closer to the position than you are as the caller, then they feed back to... no, but they shouldn't, Jason, they shouldn't be doing micromanagement. If they're doing micromanagement, something's gone wrong. So what they should be doing is saying, hey, you, and you, go and do this thing. And then it's up to those three players to figure out how to do that exactly with their individual ships. And if they have an issue, like, oh, but we'll get radared by that ship, or oh, but maybe their destroyers come back, or whatever, then it's up to them to feed that back to the caller so the caller can adjust their calling.
Clearly, what needs to happen is you need to get all 9 players to stream to Discord, and then you have one master caller who isn't actually in the game, but just sits and watches everybody else's screen. No. Okay, maybe not.
I guess I'll put into this really quickly because it's something that I very much noticed when moving from bots to Rain. Like from, let's say, more of the middle of the pack Hurricane clan to a actual top Hurricane clan. And it's that even those kinds of things where the caller would like call like, oh, go and do this, go and do that, and like just say the outcome and do whatever, like how you achieve it is like irrelevant. Even those kinds of things can sometimes just be are more expected, in the sense that if you see like the other flank is failing, then you have to realize that like, oh, we're not winning the other flank, we have to make something happen here, or you have to realize a play like by yourself or with the people
The
on
speed
your
of
flank.
identification. That's what sets the top teams apart, is the speed at which they can react.
Yes. Basically, if you want to be a regular player for a top team, you need to see things faster than the others and execute things better than the others. It's that simple.
Chat, by the way, we've stopped recording. This is just the after party. What I might actually, because it's a really interesting discussion as well, what I might actually do is highlight this and stick this on YouTube as well. So that if you want to, if you want to listen to it back, you can.
Without we're saying his things, yes.
We're not recording right now. At least we're not recording via like the podcast medium. So if you guys wanna chat to us and ask us questions, please do. Just ignore what's on the screen there. It's just
Sarah, why are you so toxic?
I think a thing that I often do in usually like COTS or clan battles is that if, say, in King of the Sea, where I'm sort of like one flanked battleship and I'm hanging back because of like I need to sit here to get shots over islands, and I'm not like laser focused on what's going on in a cap to like maybe make a call for a radar, you'll like devolve authority. Like if your destroyer players in the cap, so just using players from Throw's example, it'd be like, okay, like Reese is in the Stalingrad. When Kai calls for your radar, you listen to him. You don't wait for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. Because like they know the plan, and all they have to do is coordinate between themselves. Yeah, and you'll be busy dealing with whatever you're dealing with.
Yeah, obviously. And then there's also now I'm sure Lulu is, or Sarah, you don't have to deal with this, but the the classic issue of when the caller goes, "Can you radar?" as in, "Do you have radar available?" And the player hits radar, and you're like, "No, that's not what I meant."
Yes, that happens.
We do
You
have
can always what I find really interesting is watching when mistakes happen. So we saw, I can't remember which teams it was, but like I think it was the internationals, there was an example where a team, obviously the caller said radar, and all 3 of the radar ships that were on that team all pressed their radar at the same time. But it was no coincidence that at the time they were losing and they were under a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
And
we're not immune to those fuck ups as well. That's what Killer Bean talked about. Do you have radar, or can you radar? Meaning,
I think the dangerous one is, can you radar?
Yeah, is your radar available? And if
Yeah.
the guy radars.
Because all the radar pointer hears is radar.
Yeah. I've heard Killerman say, start with, don't do it, but.
Or
don't do it, but have you got your radar?
Or you call, or a destroyer calls for a radar in an area where he's surrounded by 2 of his radar cruiser mates, and they both press radar at the same time. It happens to us as well. It's and it's I would go as far as saying that it's not uncommon at all.
And I think it's something that can be solved with training, like language use, and just tell everyone, like, if I say, can you radar, the answer is yes or no, it is not to radar.
Or do you have radar available?
Yeah, I think you can definitely.
It's very hard when you're in the middle of a situation and you have to make the decision within a split second, and you're like, the word comes out of your mouth nearly uncontrolled. You scream radar without realizing that 2 of your mates can potentially radar your target, and they both radar at the same time. It's really hard to have this discipline. It's like, it's not something you can completely control. So
I think the best we had was, I'm radared. Okay, I radar. That was something like,
what?
I'm radared. Someone said I'm radared, and one of the cruiser radared instantly because he understood radar, please, or something like that.
No, we've had the exact same issue. It's just like, it's just like, what? And then it always comes back to bite you in the ass. Like right when you need it.
Yeah, of course, because when you need it, that's when it's on cooldown. Of course, yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's because generally people will look, he's just blew his radar. We can make a play now. Like that will be like, it's not like it's coming back to bite you. It's because you were fucked up and they are counterworking it because they know you.
And Rock Dodgy, you're right, and Packerbergy, like, this is something that you will see hopefully less often in teams that train together regularly, because they'll be used to the kind of language that they each other use, and maybe they'll actually have specific wording that they use within that team, whereas a bunch of players who just come together. And I saw a question earlier which was, hey, wouldn't it be cool to get I can't remember whose question it was, but hey, wouldn't it be cool to get a whole bunch of streamers together and make a COTS team? Like, yeah,
we tried that.
In entertainment terms, yes. So any of those of you who are watching the last Team League, was it Team League? What's the one where we got together a team? Yeah, at the end it was like all the streamers against the winning team. And it was reasonably close. But the problem is that, like we were saying earlier, like, individual skill is very important, but like knowing each other is really important as well. And just because you're a streamer doesn't necessarily mean you've played alongside the other people regularly. And even if you have, it's probably not in a competitive setting. And some streamers have very little competitive experience. Some people have lots of competitive experience at different levels. So it's like, you couldn't, like, for example, you couldn't drop me into a COTS finals team and expect me to perform, because I'm not at that level of individual play, and I don't have the experience of playing in a team in general, and I don't have the experience of playing in that team specifically. So while it would be interesting, I don't think that they would do very well.
I still want to suggest the mouthy Twitch team.
Yes, the one that we've been petitioning for ages, that Sarah still hasn't fucking organised, as one of the COTS organisers. We get the 12 loudest people from Twitch chat, make a team out with them, make them play against the winners.
But here's a question. Ara Eve, If you could make any change to the game to make competitive better, what would it be?
Delete CVs. Too easy.
Well, if we're starting from the point of view of carriers can be in it, then it's probably all of us are going to say take the carriers away. Where are we starting from, Arrow? Are we starting from there aren't any carriers, or are we starting from there are carriers? Because there would be two different answers, I think.
I mean,
no, starting from no CVs. Okay.
Throwing CVs out of the discussion, the best thing that could happen to competitive is moving towards professionalism. That's simple. Because I cannot think of a specific thing, like more rewards. I don't know, like
training room, spectator improvements to that. That would increase the professionalism 100-fold.
Yes, I guess. Yeah, a smoother way of a smoother infrastructure, if that makes sense. Smoother way of entering the competitive game through better training rooms, a smoother way of spectating. Yeah, this I guess this, yes.
I mean, in a grander scheme sort of idea, any improvement to how the game teaches players to play would knock on to produce more good players overall.
While that's somewhat true, I guess actually top players are not born in the same sense. There's always a sort of propelling effect by friends who are already at a higher level in that sense. It's kind of coaching, but even when there's no actual coaching going on, there's a learning from friends that always propels it.
Yeah.
I mean, you'll see more decent players at least. You won't see as many.
It will improve the middle ground of the competitive scene and give players who come up in that group who want to progress better opportunities.
Yes, that I agree with.
By the way, if anyone's on Team Welthunt, can you go get those last 49 points so I get my last 10 beast tokens? Thank you.
Here's one from Vanyup. So a bit of a nasty question, but would you three be willing to share what your biggest fuck up in comp was?
Biggest fuck up in comp?
I know what mine is. Mine was this cards.
No, it wasn't. Yours was fucking that other tournament that fucking made a clan explode.
Yes. Yeah, that wasn't my fault. Never picked the wrong ship.
Any more exclusive confessions people want to make?
My one was trying to push a Salem and kill it, and him managing to get away from me before I killed him.
I still don't know how I managed to get away with being fucking spotted 8 kilometers in front of a Kremlin and not exploding in my domain 2 COTS. There's a reason I'm not in any COTS teams anymore. It's because of shit like that.
I think individually speaking, I don't remember one insanely massive fuck up in one game, but I remember playing a bad series, and it was I think this summer's Worship Masters International Best of 5 final versus TWA. I played Minotaur 2 or 3 times, and each of this game was a tragedy from an individual skill point of view.
I have specific memories of strangers saying, "You're better than this, Lulu. You're better than this." When we were in the Help Me viewing party about 2 COTS ago, when your Minotaur exploded with Stalingrad.
That.
Yes, well, it's how it is when you play those kind of positions. You are not immune to fuck ups because
No, that wasn't me having a go. I was just that's something that's burned into my mind as strangers saying this.
Well,
interesting question. It's an interesting question. I don't think the answer is that interesting. But will the removal of friendly damage allow any new tactics that were not possible before?
No.
Suicide shimmers.
So. Yeah, the answer is no.
The answer is Kit Kami is now viable. Wait, what? No.
Oh God, not that. No.
There might be the odd situation where, for example, you've got 2 battleships coming together. Maybe your battleship is really, really healthy, and there's another battleship that's not very healthy, and it's trying to get the ram, and you've got a destroyer there that can stop the the ram potentially, but you have to throw a whole bunch of torpedoes in a bit of a risky position. If it's kind of a close decision as to whether to do that or not, obviously if there's no team damage, then that player is likely to take the risk.
I think even with the current system,
yes.
if your BB is at the risk of dying to like and being massively not in favor if their BB is on 10 and yours is on 60, if I'm in the 60k battleship, I would be screaming at my destroyer to fire torps.
Sure.
Like, I can heal that.
The beautiful thing though about
him.
the beautiful thing about competitive though, and I'm thinking back. I don't know if Kai is listening, but I'm thinking back to that incident with me and Kai in clan battles, where you can obviously communicate directly with the player that you're about to throw torps towards, and you can say, "Hey, I've just launched torps. Keep reversing," or whatever it happens to be. Whereas in random battles, if you tried that, then obviously the player that you're torping towards. It is, yes. So for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about in clan battles, Kai in our team he's now a CV main, but he used to be our main destroyer player, and insanely good player, able to he's got Jedi abilities to be in the right place at the right time, and I think I was playing Stalingrad. I was nosing. It was in the season which had the storms. And so it was like the season where, like on mountain range, you'd be shooting blind across the map and things like that. And I ended up nose in, and I think I was going in for a ram or something. And he said very, very quietly, if you listen back to the clip, something like, "Watch out for my torps." But he said it so quietly, and there's like loads of crap going on, like people shouting at each other and shells and whatever. And I just didn't hear it.
I just got bonked by your bot.
You just got bonked by my bot. Oh no!
For posting a link.
Yeah, it does that. Let me give you permission.
Bonk.
Oh, he's Bannyup's done it. You can post it again. Try again.
I don't know why,
Yeah,
but ever since that one day that I did like tier 8 Merkin for you during that brawls, I've had Libonk stuck in my head. Thank you very much for that, Azir.
Don't worry, the catchphrase changes every couple weeks.
No, it doesn't. Libonk has been there since whenever the tier 8 season was. So, like the brawl.
I remember, but the catchphrase changes a lot.
But
especially with Azure.
All right, so changing the topic, we very briefly touched on it during the podcast, but didn't. Submarines. Do you guys? Yeah, I know, but do you guys think? Do you think? I mean, we don't really know exactly what they're gonna be like in the end, but do you think that they will be forced into competitive? Do you think that they will have a place in competitive in terms of tournaments specifically? Obviously, they will end up in clan battles, but
well, what's for sure is that Wargaming will try to force them into their modes.
No doubt.
Like they've been trying forever to force CVs into competitive. There's no reason they won't try to do the same with subs. The problem is that the overall balance of the game, especially the balance of the competitive meta, is very fragile. It's a very subtle balance that they need to find, and only one ship can throw the balance away, like Petropavlovsk. Not even mentioning carriers. Subs bring such a disruption to gameplay. I mean, they would if they were implemented in the current phase that's being talked about. I don't really see how they could flawlessly be implemented into competitive. I can't say it happen. I hope I'm wrong for the future. Players will be playing competitive, but I don't know. I'm not very optimistic. Seeing how bad they're struggling to implement carriers, subs will be a shit fiesta.
I guess it depends like how they're added in, because if let's say it's a tournament, and let's say it was King of the Sea, and King of the Sea orgs give the options to the teams to say, okay, you've still got 9 slots, but now if you want to, you can bring up to 1 submarine.
It would depend entirely on the subs' speed.
Absolutely, I agree, and
if the subs
we don't
are
know.
slower than the DDs. There's no point bringing it.
I totally agree.
Like COTS was won and lost based on rotations, or that triple more so, you know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
mobility and like getting around the map and repositioning.
Mobility and vision.
And subs, like, yeah, you can survive a bit, but in the current state in the last round of testing, they do bugger all in the way of damage, bugger all in the way of spotting, bugger all in the way of mobility or any sort of control. They just exist.
This is why I think I've been saying when people are like, "Oh my god, panic!" I'm like, I just don't think it's going to be a thing. I think they're just going to be like, "Okay, submarines are in. That's nice. Next," because they're just not going to have that much match influence. I don't think. I might be wrong, because of course we don't know what toys the tier 10s are going to come with.
I mean, utility-wise, I would say that's
Deep
pretty
water
correct.
radar. No.
Well, we don't know. That's the problem. You know, but you know, if the tier 6s are anything to go by, I just think they're just not going to be that interesting. And if the teams have a choice not to take them, they probably won't take them. It's the problem's going to come when if it's a you have to take one for some reason. So it depends how they bring them in, I think.
I mean, what's the likelihood that the meta strategy becomes, let's take, for example, what's that map called? Northern Waters. The meta is now park a submarine outside the B cap and just, you know, if the enemy tries to contest it, you just poke your submarine up and then you just wait underneath it forever. Like, all I can see is some incredibly boring stuff coming out. I can't see any sort of fun or anything remotely resembling interesting stuff coming out of that.
Yeah, that is my concern with the submarines, is that they're just not going to be that interesting.
It's just a DD that doesn't die.
But given a new class release that's boring compared to a new class release that does what the action carriers did, or arguably what the original carriers did, I would go for the boring one, because then no one will play them and it will just die.
Balance-wise, yes.
But
for the sake of competitive in general.
Don't worry, we'll find some 60-knot secret Russian submarine plan.
But the streamer and casual player in me wants them to be interesting, because I really want some extra something to do, right? I would love them to be interesting to play. But the problem is now it probably means that they're a little bit too strong. So I don't know. I'm kind of I want to be optimistic, but I think for competitive, they're just going to be a non-thing.
Well, to me, World of Warships is about surface ship combat, and the second that you remove either surface or ship from the equation,
combat.
Yeah, like I think I might just be misunderstanding this game.
How do you feel about we actually talked about that, Ara. So if you when the podcast gets released, if you go and find the podcast, the actual podcast, this is the after party podcast where we're just chatting. If you go and find the actual proper formal podcast, we actually did talk briefly about the Dutch cruisers. The problem that we have is that quite a lot of us are bound by the NDA, and we have played them, and so we have to be very careful not to talk about the experience of playing them. We can only talk about the mechanics that are sort of publicly known. So we have to dance around that a little bit, but we did have a bit of a discussion.
Real quick, it's close to midnight here. Sorry.
Yeah, you are definitely. You can go if you want to. That's absolutely fine. Thank you very much.
So thank you again for the casting and the people for the question. And good night. Good night. See you.
Thank you, Azir. Pleasure to talk to you.
Yes. Goodbye.
Yes, thank you very much.
Disconnected from your channel.
Oh, I've just seen I have DMs from.
How did it go? I got to sleep. I got to go to work.
It was like 7 minutes ago. I heard Azure, but I didn't see what you said. It's like I don't remember what I said 7 minutes ago. It's fine.
You must say the worst food and drink you've ever seen at an after party. Well, I wasn't responsible for the catering, so don't blame me, Logan.
Vanjup asked an interesting question about maps. That should or shouldn't be added to King of the Sea. There are certain maps that I like and I would like to play in a competitive setting, but thing is, lots of maps are not balanced, which is an issue because you cannot have so many maps that are not balanced. Otherwise, you have issues. This King of the Sea, for example, in the later stages, no one would pick Land of Fire, for example. if you look at the banning historic, I'm pretty sure from round of 16 / quarterfinals onwards, Land of Fire was very rarely picked because the northern spawn is very, very favorable. So teams would just not
And
pick.
ACAP was very easily rushable.
I mean,
Arguably,
ACAP
if Wargaming were going to get serious about competitive and they were going to produce maps
Just
specifically for competitive,
rotational
they would
symmetry.
have to be rotationally symmetrical.
Yeah,
Or close to it.
I
Like,
mean,
we
you
don't
could
have
literally
we have
just
maps
make
that
I-
are not completely symmetrical, like Northern
But-
Waters and North, but are so close to it that it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, but there are
Loop
still differences
also
though. That's the problem.
There are.
Favored the north side, I found.
also
island
Yeah,
have big
all the
cruisers.
casters were very happy that Loop was probably the most banned map because it's insanely boring to watch for most
I
teams.
find Loop quite entertaining, but I'm different, I
Mm.
guess.
That depends
Yeah,
on
there
which
wasn't
match you
unusually-
watch.
Yes, but there was an unusually exciting loop game.
Yeah.
No, they can't. No, I'm not saying they can't be, but generally speaking, it gets a bit campy.
Yes.
Loop was the most banned map because it was the hardest one to play.
Yes,
Yeah, hardest to play
yeah.
from the south. I
Yeah.
always found north.
It's
was
I'm not
easier.
saying like tactically it's a very interesting map, but from a pure watching action point of view, it tends to get a bit boring.
I mean, maybe, but overall, I mean,
Just give me Two Brothers. I want to watch it once.
The Rain
Te-
versus Shaft game was actually really interesting. wasn't it?
Tears of the Desert would be kind of interesting.
We've seen TS hundreds of times. Like, but people think I think people just got bored of it. I don't know why.
Yeah,
but
no, what's it? What's the Thunderdome map?
Sleeping Giant.
Sleeping
Sleeping Giant, yeah.
Yeah, that would
I'd
be
like that in COTS, I think.
It's possible we will see it next COTS along with Tears of the Desert, actually.
Burble, sorry, I have to say,
possible.
Burble, thank you very much for the 10 gift subs. It's muchly appreciated. Thank you.
I
very much.
would very much like to see some actual competitively designed, rotationally symmetrical maps. Just take any of like the current block. Of
Yeah, just
competitive
draw a
maps.
line across the middle and mirror it.
Yeah, just take the top. Like, you can make 2 maps out of it. You could just take Land of Fire,
Exactly,
take the top left,
yes.
take the bottom right,
Yes,
and just 2
yes,
mirrored versions of it. Done.
yes.
Tournament Land of Tournament Fire.
Well, hopefully, because
Ocean
obviously
in
at the moment,
COTS
you know,
where the sun's directly above you, so it doesn't
Yeah.
blind one
Just
team.
have 2
Yes.
suns. Simple. We're
Just
fucking on
nighttime.
Tatooine. We're like
ocean nighttime.
Mm.
Yeah, 2 kilometer spotting.
Star shells.
I still really, I'm really hoping that at some point they implement the cherry blossoms star shells mechanic into something, because I thought that was really interesting. Well, hopefully, after they've finished fiddling with all the maps for submarines, hopefully we'll get some more maps. Hopefully.
Tell you what, we're probably going to end up with that. Nobody's going to enjoy is actually Islands of Ice. Currently,
I wouldn't mind it.
it's not actually the worst now I think about it, but
It's kind of just a mountain range 2.0 in some ways. But
Yeah, it's very similar. Old Islands of Ice.
Oh god, please, not mountain range.
Oh, no.
Please, not mountain range.
No, please,
No,
God.
please,
Mountain
no.
Range is the most boring map in the world.
we'll bring back Tears of the Desert, don't worry.
Riposte?
I'd
I'd love
rather
to see
have
Riposte.
Tears than-
Riposte is cool. I like
I'd rather have Tears than Land of Fire.
Riposte too
And
small
mountain
for
range.
10v10. Sorry, for tier 10.
Yeah, but you know, like you could.
Well, no, that's the one that is rotationally symmetrical.
That's true.
Also, yes, Ocean is symmetrical, but because of how the sun is placed, there's like still a really big imbalance.
Land of Fire currently has that really badly,
Oh.
actually. Traces are
does?
pretty much invisible from the like if you're on the northern spawn and you're looking like from like the
Is it
J
hotspot?
line, the
Is it
10 line.
hotspot?
Yeah,
on
so
the, on
Van-
the one line, it's directly in the sun is reflecting on the water, so ships can kind of sort of
Mhm.
disappear into the white.
Mhm. Yep, true. Benny Epps also pointed out that Riposte is in tier 10 rank this season, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, but it's
But it's 77.
not 99.
Olviman, auto aim is not really that useful. So the ship that you're shooting at has to be, and to be clear, that mechanic is active all the time. You just don't realize. If they turned it off, you would definitely notice, because you would just miss everything. So if a ship is parked behind an island and it's broadside to you or it's not moving, then maybe it can help you. If that ship is angled and moving and like, it's not really going to help you that much. So it's, although I know that was a bit of a meme, it's been in the game for years and it's really not that useful.
I would disagree with it not being useful, but
Right, it's very rarely useful.
Yes.
So I wouldn't worry your head about that if I were you.
By the way, when I asked you guys earlier to go get some more points, you are still missing some points. I would like these points. I would like to get my last 10 tokens.
He wants his tokens.
Please, members of Team Welthunt, please go and get me another 49 points. Thank you very much.
Sorry, I'm a lowly fireputs.
I forgot something when we were discussing the one thing that could make competitive better. Remove all of the shit weather effects from.
Oh God, yeah.
Like this fucking cyclone, this
Yeah.
snowstorm thing. Just get rid of this, please.
Yeah.
My favorite is when you get 3 minutes into a game and then like the organizer realizes that he's accidentally left Wait, actually, when does it tell you that cyclone is? Like, how long into the game are you warned about the cyclone?
I think it depends. It can change depending on how they've set it. Because like they've done things with the climb battles, for example, where it was a lot quicker than it would be in a random battle match.
Well,
I think it's like 3 minutes usually.
In a COTS game, I'm sure I've seen a restart called because they've left the cyclone on. I've also seen a COTS
the problem with the
30 minutes instead of 20.
The problem with the training room interface, if it's a map that can support cyclone or any kind of weather effect, if you go back into the settings of the training room and you change literally anything, it automatically turns on the cyclone. And so, like, why that's a thing, I have no idea. They need to stop doing that.
How about for next COTS, what we do is we add armor resilience test to the map pool?
Oh, I'd love to. I mean, like we've done that in training rooms, shenanigans, and it's actually kind of fun. I mean, not for a tournament, but
yeah, because we all know how well like Paula went 5v5 as a type.
I was about to mention it.
Yeah, no, you got a point. Yeah, well, Freehand, we spent quite a long time during the podcast actually talking about training rooms, and we're actually going to be talking to Sarah and the other orgs and hopefully Wargaming about some ideas that we have as casters to help them implement it. Because certainly, like I was saying in the podcast, some of the feedback that I got literally immediately after I finished casting the finals on like things that I should be doing, basically were not possible because of the way the training room is and because of the way that the interface is while you're in spectator mode. So yeah, we'll be definitely giving them some feedback, and hopefully they'll be taking it a bit more seriously. Yep, torpedo jousting. Rip torpedo jousting. No more torpedo jousting.
What is torpedo jousting?
Oh, have you never done torpedo jousting? It's a tradition. It's a World of Warships tradition. You take a V-25, you spec it for torpedoing friendly ships.
Okay, got him.
And you get a whole bunch of people in a training room. You put if you've got just one team, you put bots on the other team, and then you all go into one specific area in the map, like for example the middle ring in Polar, and you are only allowed to use your front torpedoes, and you have to try and kill your friendly teammates.
Yeah, I just didn't get the meaning of the word.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And I got it afterwards. Like it's too close to a French word, but I didn't get it initially.
Oh, okay. It's it's a lot of fun.
So what is the French word for when two knights charge at each other with big sticks?
It's a joute. I'm gonna write it in chat.
Because it's probably where we get the word for it.
Undoubtedly.
There's the verb and the noun.
Yeah. So in English, it's joust or jousting.
Yes,
It's
exactly.
no coincidence that the part of society at that time that would have been doing jousting would have been speaking French. Or at least Norman French.
99 was partially required to have spectators and casters before. Is there any thought in upping COTS to 12v12? That would kill a lot of teams.
Yeah, 12v. I don't think we'll be changing the format in that sense. Like it'll, it's extremely unlikely that this format of 10v10 or tier 10 9v9 will ever change.
We had enough difficulty making sure our 9 strongest were available. Trying to do it for our 12 strongest.
I think 9 is the perfect balance between having just enough players to make things as interesting as possible, and not making things either too cluttered or too hard for teams to get together.
Make a huge map and go 30 versus 30.
That might be fun as a show match, but
It would be fun as a mode. I hope they do that at some point.
yeah.
But
Sure.
I mean, Wargaming have explained that one of the problems that 12 is kind of the limit at the moment is that, unlike, say, tanks, where when you scale up the number of tanks, you're scaling up the number of shells and guns 1-to-1. When you scale up ships, you're scaling up the number of shells involved by at least an order of magnitude, because not only do ships have many guns, like 16 guns each in some cases,
Look at you,
but
Colbert.
also they can have 4 or 5 volleys in the air at once. And so you're talking about hundreds of shells being in the air. And that is a server resources problem, which is why they don't currently go above 12.
I think it's just very poor optimization on behalf of their collision detection algorithms.
And that.
Like, quite frankly, like, you know, if you're going to put that many shells in the air, like, I would love to know how the collision detection works.
Wargaming, you can make the checks payable to...
Also, I think 15 versus 15 would be shit.
It would also be quite difficult to watch, because even with 9v9, as a spectator, it's quite difficult to keep an eye on everything that's going on at the same time. You quite often end up with action going on at all 3 caps at once. And if it was 12 players or 15 players, that would just be impossible to watch.
And 15 or even 12 players, competitive teams, competent teams, would be able to lock the map down so easily. Even in 9v9, on some maps, such as Loop, for example, or Land of Fire, you can lock the map down. 12 versus 12, or even 15 versus 15 would be such a boring stalemate.
No one would be able to move. There'd be no flanking. Yeah, it'd be, you're right. Yep. 12 Austins versus 12 Austins. Yeah.
I remember when, like, people thought that Austin was going to be terrifying during cuts, and it was so, like, exactly one of them.
Some ships, some teams were so concerned they banned it, or tried to ban it.
Doubled Minotaur will never ever be power crept, I believe. It is such a niche ship. No one can do what it does, which means it cannot really be power crept, if that makes sense. Of course, if every single ship that comes into the game from now on has arcs and pen angles, yeah, it's gonna be tough.
If they introduce a ship that does the same thing but better, then yes. But
and Plymouth is not that ship.
Plymouth is not that ship, and I'm sure they made certain that that's not that ship.
Plymouth is not that ship. Austin is not that ship. So Minotaur still has its niche. It's had its niche ever since it was added into the game, and it's been good at what it does ever since it was added into the game. And it's been used as an extremely effective radar bot from the get-go, and still is, and still will be, most likely. So, yeah.
Was it you that used a Minotaur in Land of Fire A-Cap South Spawn a while back?
A-Cap, no. B-Cap, yeah. Very often, but not A.
I could have sworn somebody used it at A-Cap, and I was like, who? I thought it was you, but no. So, like, this is before the Petro meta, so I might be...
I remember Lulu hanging around under B, but not A.
Might just be, like, you know, brain getting old.
So, Christopher Colombo, Vanyup.
That was allowed, wasn't it? No, it wasn't allowed, actually. But no, it's just not going to be viable. Simply doesn't have the range.
What kind of niche it would fill?
Lacks the firepower.
The only thing it's got is a gimmick, which...
it could smack cruisers, but that's not really enough of a...
I mean, literally everything can smack cruisers, though.
But yeah, that's the thing. If you're trying to take down a camping cruiser, there's other ways to do that.
Like... the only thing it's got going for it is its weird smoke gimmick, but that's useless.
Someone will find it useful.
One thing to keep in mind is that Colombo was balanced
around Deadeye.
With Deadeye, around Deadeye, yeah.
Very true.
Now that Deadeye is gone, Colombo is very underwhelming.
This is something I find very interesting when I've asked Wargaming this question before. Like, when you're balancing ships, do you take into account things like current mechanics testing? Do you take into account the builds that players are using on those test ships? The answer is no, they don't.
The American battleships, the Vermont, the Minnesota, and the Kansas,
Kansas.
and the TF5 Premium, that can't Oklahoma. Those were all tested during the Deadeye bug from the previous King of the Sea.
Yes.
Not
Do you
Deadeye,
mean
sorry.
expert marksman?
Yeah. Sorry, like
Yep. Yep.
which meant that he had ridiculously fast turret traverse compared to what they should have had, and basically they were bounced around that, and then we just, I mean, they're still in a fine state. It's just, I find it weird that every time that King of the Sea rolls around, there's something really interesting going on for battleships. Like last time it was the expert marksman bug. This time we had Deadeye. You know, like,
yeah, that's true.
every
Next time it'll be submarines.
How are they going to buff battleships?
I don't know. No, they're going to buff battleships. They're going to the tier 10 submarines are going to be ridiculously overpowered and be able to kill you, like with their 25-kilometer completely automated self-guiding torpedoes. They'll be able to hunt your battleship out before you've even been spotted.
I mean, at that point, just run Mogador Death Squads. Mogador Death Squads? Yeah.
Mogador Death Squads. Sounds terrifying.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah. I mean, I don't. This is one thing. How are you ever going to deal with a Kleber as a submarine, by the way? No? Okay, just checking.
Good question. Come back to me in autumn when they come out. If they come out in autumn, which is when I think they're going to come out. Yes. Do you think that Petro will evolve into an automan? I don't know. I don't know. We talked about. We're going back over topics that we've already talked about now, but like as I said earlier, as the number of ships at tier 10 increases, they are either going to have to balance them in a way that works for competitive, or exclude them.
I would still like to bring up the point about something I brought up right at the starter cards, before the starter cards actually, was the possibility of recalculating the ban per stage, the global ban. And now I'm thinking maybe just have a revote of the global ban per stage, because can you imagine, like, we get to next season and then all of a sudden, let's say, I don't know, let's make up a new ship. There's a new Japanese light cruiser line, and it's got a really overpowered tier 10 or something. But nobody knows that it's overpowered until you bring 7 of them, at which point it becomes basically like Petro again. But like, but nobody knows about it because everyone at the start of the last cards was like, Petro's crap,
Yeah, Petro's
Petro's
no problem.
crap, Petro's crap. And then you see 10 of them, it's like, actually, maybe it's not so crap.
Who said that?
If you go back to episode 3 of our podcast, and you can listen to Toby and Eclair saying how they held a focus group, and none of the clans raised the Petro as being a problem.
Yeah, I mean, potentially I was not in focus group back then for some weird reason, but
it's your fault.
I blame you, Lulu.
But yeah, maybe it was not seen as
no.
big of an issue as it actually turned out to be.
So, I think it's safe to say that it was a bit of a surprise that it became so powerful.
No,
yeah. But think about it. It was released pretty soon before the tournament, so
I think I remember when it was released, going, "This thing looks like it's perfectly set up for comp," because it's like it was what, like 11.9 detection, 12k radar, very good protection, excellent guns.
The first question though was accurate. Will it evolve into an autoban? And the word autoban is important. Autoban means Wargaming default bans it without a vote. Now, this is what we wanted initially. We came to Wargaming and said, okay, we saw what happened with Petro last time. It was a complete shit fiesta. We don't want that anymore. So we want Petro to be blanket banned directly as a rule. They didn't want it. They didn't want any blanket ban to begin with, and we had to push for
even of unavailable ship.
No, that's different. I'm talking about the Petropavlovsk. So they said, okay, fine, we'll give you the ban, but it's not going to be a Petro ban to begin with. Teams at sign up will vote for a ship to ban, and this is what happened in the end. And we got Petro because Petro was widely recognized as the ship to ban. But will it be the case later? I don't know. So it's wait and see. Also, 2 questions that are linked. What makes the Petropavlovsk so OP, and what kind of nerf could solve the Petro issue? What makes Petro OP is a combination of things, not one distinctive feature that makes it OP. First of all, it's very low on the water, so it has a very small surface, a hittable hitbox.
Yeah, its freeboard is very low. The amount of the hull above the waterline is very, very small, which makes it difficult to hit.
You have a very small portion of the hull that's actually exposed. It has a very small superstructure, and the guns are very big compared to the size of the ship, which means that out of all the connections that you'll get on the ship, most will hit the turret or the very armored deck. Very few hits will actually connect to the superstructure or the 25 millimeters bow and stern, because those portions are super small. All of the rest of the ship is heavily armored, will make your AP and HE shatter, and it's very small, and the superstructure is very small. So you have a ship that's extremely tanky. The Petropavlovsk is way, way, way tankier than the Stalingrad, for example, despite Stalingrad not having the 25 millimeter bow. Also, Petropavlovsk is extremely tanky, extremely concealed. You have 12.4 or 5 or something. It's been nerfed, but it's above 12-kilometer concealment for 12-kilometer radar. Even though the radar is short, it's tough to maintain the Petro spotted because of this reason, because of this concealment to radar ratio. And finally, it has the improved pan angles, which makes it very cancer to deal with, since it makes it hard to use all of your turrets efficiently, especially when you have to deal with multiple Petros at the same time. You're never going to be able to shoot at one guy with all of your guns without being broadside to one of his mates. So this combination of factors makes it extremely cancer to deal with Petro, and there's no real there's not one feature that you can nerf massively to make it viable without making it shit. You could give it 2 km more concealment. Maybe that would actually balance the thing, but it would make it more painful to play in any other mode. So that's not probably the solution. It's just a design that's super suited to competitive. It makes it super cancer.
And for those of you that have turned up after we stopped recording, we did discuss this during the podcast. So go back and listen, because we did discuss this at length about Petra specifically and other ship bans and how balancing works considering competitive, and it's a very complex topic. Yeah. Right. Go on.
No, just, one of the questions from Andrew 300-169. Chat's moved. What is the target of Clan Wars? Players, viewers, or wargaming profit?
Whose target?
Yeah, I'm not sure what you mean by that.
Whose target? Wargaming's? The players? If you mean wargaming's, then obviously it's to keep people playing and to spend money on the game. If you mean the players, then to earn the rewards. Steal probably being the most common goal.
What's the question?
What's
what they mean by that?
It's interesting wording. What's Wargaming's goal? Wargaming's goal as a profit-making company is to keep people playing the game and to make a profit. So every decision that they make has to, like every company on Earth, every decision that they make has to consider their bottom line. And so their main goal as a free-to-play developer is to keep people logging into the game, because if you log into the game, you're more likely to spend money, and then once you're in the game, to try and encourage you to spend money on the game. They're a company. That's how they make money. Who decides that? Well, Wargaming. I'm not sure. Not sure why it comes as a surprise to people that a profit-making organization wants to make money. That's literally why they exist. They're not running a game as a charity. Players may want to enjoy tier 8, viewers may want to... Sorry, Andrew, I don't know what you mean.
Like, are you asking like why Wargaming decide that clan battles this season will be tier 10?
So if you look at the history of the clan battle seasons, they do bounce it around a lot. They try and have a different tier every season. I think a lot of the recent tier choices have been down to them considering what to do with carriers in the background. They're using clan battles as a way of collecting a lot of data about having carriers and not having carriers, and no doubt they'll do the same thing with submarines. But generally speaking, I think they just try and spread the tiers around in all the different modes that we've had recently in terms of clan battles and brawls and ranked sprint and those kind of things, to try and get as much variety as possible. Again, because variety makes people log in.
Yeah, when they look at charts,
yeah.
they see what people like, and they go for this.
That's a good point. Like any business, they'll do something. They'll have a campaign of some kind, and you better believe that they're looking at the stats from that. And then if they see some kind of increase that's going to lead to more money coming in, you better bet your ass that they're going to do that again. So if they do something like, for example, this new auctions thing, if that's really popular and it makes loads of money, you better bet they're going to continue doing it. If everyone ignores it, then they won't do it because it's not worth the investment. Right.
Yeah. I mean, Zao got power. That's why you don't see Zao anymore.
Oh my god, Benny, I need a pee. What's your opinion on the regional COTS having different tournament structures? I think they should be the same, because otherwise you're playing 4 different sports and then bringing them all together. I think if you're going to have an international sports tournament, the rules in all the regions should be the same. However, the 4 regions are not united because no one owns them. That's the problem, and it's the benefit of something like Verizon, where Wargaming control it completely because they can make universal rules.
It's also because we've been given this power by Wargaming as well to keep this, because of the different sizes of the different tournaments, because Asia has only like 48 teams, whereas EU has 136, so it's kind of difficult to maintain the same structure.
But when you have, so like it's a bit, this one was more even because like EU had bans, for example. Whereas before, when you had teams coming from NA who are used to using bans and teams coming from EU who don't have bans, which is a very different environment to play in, and then you bring them on into a finals where one or other rule set gets used. In the case of COTS 11, it was no bans. That arguably gives the EU teams an advantage because they're used to that system. And you're actually taking, the analogy that I used recently was you're taking rugby league players and rugby union players and asking them to play the same sport, but they're different teams from different sports.
I need to say something because I'm reading insane shit in chat. The thing about Petropavlovsk and CVs, the argument is not those ships are too strong and I don't want to face strong ships. Like, I don't care. Des Moines is the strongest cruiser at tier 10, and we face them on a daily basis when you play competitive. It's not the point. The point is that Petropavlovsk and carriers make the meta unbearable and unenjoyable to play. This is the sole point here. It's not about those ships being too strong and us competitive players, toxic elitists, not being willing to play against those ships. It's not about those ships being strong. It's that they create a very unhealthy meta. They create a meta in which to fight the Petropavlovsk, you need to use Petropavlovsk yourself. It's the only way. And we saw that in King of the Sea this autumn. And this is unhealthy. You cannot argue that a meta in which to face one ship and deal with that ship, you need to use the same ship yourself, is a healthy meta. That doesn't work. This is the sole point, and it's not even an argument. So stop with this, stop with this whining argument. This is not correct.
I agree. And I think the fact that players don't want to play in that kind of stale meta is great, because it means that we, as spectators and casters, we get a more interesting tournament. You're driving at it from a slightly different reason, but it's the same goal. Yeah. Right. I want to draw this together because we've been talking for 4 hours and I need to get up and take a break. So I'm gonna say thank you to you guys.
Right, thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, it's been a real pleasure. I will obviously, I've got to of the actual properly recorded part, I've got to do some editing or whatever, but I'll push that out probably tomorrow. And this extended chat I will probably stick up on YouTube as like a part 2 if anyone's interested, because there's some interesting extra stuff. Unfortunately, it'll be like there's not an easy way to export the actual chat part. But maybe if I save it as a highlight, you'll have access to the chat as well. But I'll find a way of doing that. So yeah, thank you to both Lulu and Sarah who are still here, and Azure who's already gone. And all the best for the future, wherever you happen to end up and whatever you happen to be doing.
Thank you.
Right.
I don't know why I just had to do a little round of applause there, but yeah, good luck with
Woo!
your future endeavors, Lulu. Very much.
Now go pee. Yes, I will go pee, and I'll be playing. It's now 11:30, but I will play a little bit of ships. So thank you, everyone. I'll be back in a bit.